President Sarangal Whips, thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Climate Show. We really appreciate it. How is your country and its people being affected by climate change right now?
Well, probably our biggest challenge is that before we didn't experience storms, frequency of storms. In the past year, we've had typhoons, monsoons, taken out roads, destroyed homes. And being where we were located closer to the equator, we weren't in what we call the typhoon belt. So that's a direct result of the change in climate. The other things that we see is the rising sea levels. So we have in the high tides now homes being flooded, taro patches, or we call them taro swamps, where we get our food, also getting inundated with seawater. And during the last typhoon, I was most concerned because I said if it just moved off course, maybe another 15 degrees, it would be a direct hit toward our hospital, which would bring in seawater, and we could have lost our hospital. So those are real challenges, real threats that we face each day. But it doesn't just stop there. We also have impacts to our coral reefs. When we have droughts and severe drought events, we've lost reef habitats to coral bleaching. We also see a reduction in fish stock because of the warming seas. So those are all challenges that we face each day. And maybe at Glasgow, if you recall, the term I used is you might as well bomb us instead of just having us suffer through this continuous struggle that we face. And that's why it's so important that we all rise up to the challenge and really work together to find innovative ways to solve the climate crisis and the challenges that we have. If we could do it for COVID, which, I think we're almost to the point where we can say we're going to put COVID behind us with advances in vaccination and just getting us prepared, we should be able to put the world together, get the world together to focus on climate change and come up with innovative and practical solutions that we can all adapt to mitigate the impacts.
Well, yes, and I'll talk a little bit about the steps you're taking to try to get some coordinated action. But in the meantime, what are you doing to try to adapt to the effects of climate change, and how are you paying for it?
Well, I think one of the things that at least we have done in Palau is we've taken an active role in preserving our oceans. We believe that the ocean is the largest carbon sink. It's important for us to protect our coral reefs. So one of the initiatives that was started many years ago was to have an area, we call them the Protected Area Network in Palau, and having reserved areas that we protect the biodiversity, but more important, those coral reefs that are so important for protecting our oceans, protecting our fish, our corals, and also serve as a carbon sink for us. We've also gone to our EEZ, which is about the size of France, and made sure that we protect it. And really, what we've been looking at here in Palau is how do we use the oceans really to improve the livelihoods of our people by using them sustainably, by looking at areas where we can develop aquaculture to not only protect the biodiversity, but to provide a healthy food source. The same thing on the high sea. I mean, our oceans. We've done a lot of work to combat IUU so that we can really manage those resources effectively, but at the same time provide food supply, food security to our islands, so that we take reduce the pressure that we have on the coral reefs by eating pelagic fish and fish that are out in the deep sea. So those are just some of the initiatives that we're doing in managing our oceans. And then on the upland, we're doing a lot of work in preserving our watersheds and the forests that we have. Palau is fortunate that we have a large landmass and not a very big population. And we believe that we're blessed, and it is our responsibility to protect and develop it sustainably, not only for the Palauans, but for the world.
So you face huge challenges because of climate change, and adapting to it is expensive. So were you reassured by what was agreed at COP26, for example? Wealthy countries there, for example, promised to double adaptation finance for vulnerable countries by 2025. Do you feel that progress is really being made?
Well, I know that it's difficult to make change. But every little step counts. But I think we need to encourage our friends that said we need to start taking bigger steps. And COP26 was definitely a ray of hope that I think we're going in the right direction. And I want to thank France for being the first country this year to have the One Ocean conference and summit in France. And we're hoping to continue that on in Palau with our oceans in April 13th and 14th, and of course on to Lisbon. And I think what we want to build on is those commitments that were made. We need to increase the work, whether it's in marine pollution and protecting our seas, IUU, and also just sustainably managing our oceans and really producing a sustainable blue economy. Those are really the initiatives that we need to work on together. And our larger friends that are making a bigger impact on climate change need to step it up and also contribute to the climate mitigation and climate adaptation. And we would like to see more. And I think that's why it's important that we have these conferences and continue to push the momentum forward. Because if we don't, as my friends from the Marshall Islands, and they had me represent them at the high ambition panel at Glasgow, said, if we don't turn this around at this conference, we're going under. And why should any country or any island disappear because we didn't make the choices, the hard choices, to turn the tide around? And it's the same as saving lives. We've made big sacrifices, all of us around the world, to protect ourselves from COVID. And I think that's the same drive and initiative that we need from all countries if we're going to address climate change. And, the Glasgow gave us hope, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
OK, so what specifically do you need to see agreed and acted on at COP27?
Well, we've talked about climate adaptation, climate mitigation. We've seen those commitments, but we need to see tangible, that they really come out to the communities and they really impact lives. A lot of it is, I have to say, has been talk. And then they've made it difficult for us to access those funds. And sometimes made it difficult because they say, well, you're kind of not a small developing, or you're no longer a least developing, so maybe you can't access it. So those kinds of things, if we're really out there to help with the mitigation and the impacts and adaptation, we need to make that financing accessible, easily accessible. And so it can really make the impacts that it's intended to do. But at the same time, we need those commitments that say, if we're going to meet 1.5, we need to cut those emissions ideally in half by 2030. We cannot wait till 2050. We need to start taking bolder action sooner.
And you've joined the Commission of Small Island States, COSIS, on climate change and international law to bring a case to the UN International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. So tell us what you're trying to achieve with that action and why you feel it's necessary to take it.
Well, at times, I think as small islands, we see the change happening. We suffer it every day. And I think many times the action, the response from the larger nations is a little bit is behind. It's not happening fast enough. So really, the intent is to raise that awareness and to make people understand that the choices that you make every day impact the lives of people around the world, and especially small island states. So make the right choices. Bringing that action is to encourage people to change, to make those commitments, and to make the right decisions. So hopefully, by saying the large polluters pay, they will take responsibility. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay if you make those changes. But we need them to make those commitments and stick to them and act more aggressively. So, a study has been done, and we are the least contributors, but receive the biggest impact on climate change. And our voices need to be heard. And this is one way to let the world know the challenges that we face. And hopefully the voices can be heard and change can happen.
Do you feel listened to? Is it hard to feel listened to when you're such a small nation, just 18,000 people?
Yes, we're small, and it's hard to find us on the map. And I think sometimes that's why we're forgotten. But one of the things that that's so important by these conferences and these events, it's allowed us to raise that awareness, raise that voice. And we appreciate Sky News taking the time to reach out to us and give us the opportunity to share the challenges that we have on our small islands, so that the world knows that we should not ever live in a world where we would have to go to textbooks or history books to learn about these islands and those cultures and those people, because they vanished because of climate change. We don't want to ever see that, and I believe that this generation in the world can make a difference, and it really requires all of us working together.
How worried, though, are you for the future?
Well, I'm worried, but I have hope, because you have to be able to have hope, and you have to dream the impossible. And we've seen the advances in technology. I mean, today, you're in London, I'm here in Palau. We can have this conversation. I remember when I was going to college, and it was $4 a minute to be on a telephone call. This would not be possible. So, change can happen. We just got to put our minds, and we have to be committed to it. And I know that if the will is there, it can be done. And I have faith that people around the world generally want to do the right thing and want to do the good thing. And I think that's really what we need people around the world to understand, what the issues that we all face and how we can solve these problems together. And people have good intentions, but sometimes it's a lack of information. And really, Sky News and these conferences help us raise that awareness and hopefully make people want to make the right choices about our future.
President Sarangil Whipps Jr. of Palau, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.